Hello and welcome. This is a time of immense geoeconomic and geopolitical uncertainty. And to get a sense at how the world is seeing the big transition from President Joe Biden to the new President Donald Trump and the impact this has on India and in the rest of the world, we're joined in the national capital by the President of the World Economic Forum, Børge Brende. Thank you very much, Mr. Brende. It's great to have you back in India.
Thank you for inviting me, and great to be back in India. It's such a vibrant country.
There is so much thought that your analysts, researchers do on what's likely to happen next. And the biggest open question is the impact that the Donald Trump presidency has on different aspects of what's happening. So I want to start by talking about, trade in the Indian context. President Trump threatening tariffs against Mexico, Canada, China. How do you see this play out in reality? How much of what we're hearing from Donald Trump is just belligerence, maneuvering, negotiation tactics? And what do you think he actually intends to push through?
I think we're seeing a change to towards more nearshoring and friendshoring under President Trump's leadership. I think he's serious about the tariffs, but he also comes out with that as a bargaining position. He's a deal maker. So when he says he will put 25% tariffs on top of what is there already with Mexico, he says that he might not do that if they can contribute in stopping illegal immigration and also on the export of drugs and narcotics. If you look at India, and I guess you want me to come there too, I think India is in a pretty good situation. There is good relations between India and the US. There is also good, at least traditionally, relations between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. And for India, US is the biggest export market. It's super important, the US relationship. And you can also reflect on why we're so much speaking about the US. The short answer is that the US is 27% of the global economy and only 5% of the global population. And most of the big companies of the world are based there. So it is very important what the US decisions on trade.
He's also threatened tariffs against China. That's something that Xi Jinping and the CCP are quite worried about. Last time an American president and the American Congress put in place very high sanctions, it ultimately led to the Great Depression. And therefore, let's just deal with US-China for a moment and your impact on the kind of tariffs that he'll ultimately push through and the impact this will have on the China-US trade economic relationship.
It is true that the US market is still very important for China, but it's now only 13 to 14% of their export that goes to the US. Before it was higher, but it is also a big trade deficit for the Americans. And, Trump is also very much focusing on trade deficits. But overall, the US-China cooperation is a very complex and challenging one, since there is also great competition. We call it the G2. They are the two largest economies in the world, and they're competing. I think it's a lot about the new technologies now. Who's going to be on top of the Gen AI? Who's going to be top of data flows? Who's going to be top of quantum computing? And I think they're feeling this competition on a daily basis, and Trump will maybe introduce the 10% tariffs on top of all the tariffs that are already there. But we've also seen that China has then said, okay, then we will retaliate. We are the biggest exporter of rare minerals. We will also look into battery export, where they are very, very leading. This shows that the economies are so interwoven, so it is not easy to decouple. So I don't think we will see a decoupling between the US and China, but I think on very advanced technologies, I think there will be more and more measures taken to not trade in those most advanced areas from both sides.
So it's quite clear that Trump will push ahead with more tariffs against China, which creates an economic opening for India in terms of trying to attract some of the companies which are looking to move part of their supply chains outside mainland China. From the lens of the World Economic Forum, in terms of this journey that India has been on, to what extent do you think we're well placed to benefit from the Trump trade changes that are likely to come over the next several months?
It's true that China already have seen that some of the manufacturing has moved to Vietnam, to India, to other emerging economies. China is still producing 30% of all manufactured goods in the world, and they're 18% of the global economy. So there's still a manufacturing power, but because of the wish also to diversify the supply chains, not to put all eggs in one basket, you will see more interest in this. And India has traditionally not been the great manufacturer of the world. It's strong on services, it's strong on digital trade, but we are seeing a difference. We're seeing that manufacturing is coming here to India, make in India, I think it is called. And just look, Apple didn't produce any iPhones in India a few years ago. And this year we're expecting that there will be produced iPhones in India for $10 billion US. 7 billion is for export. And I think companies are learning that it is not only back offices and services that are possible in India, but there's also starting now to see industrial plants and industrial knowledge. So production is also possible here, as we have seen, for example, for a long time in the pharmaceutical industry, where India already is strong.
There's been a recent slowdown in economic growth in India. From the perspective of the World Economic Forum, what's your outlook for the rest of the year and for time to come?
So medium and long term, we're very bullish still on India. It is gone from being the 13th largest economy in the world to be the 5th, and it will soon become the 3rd largest economy in the world. That's why I also coined this G3 in an interview with you, I think a year ago, because we will have US, China, and India. Of course, we will have also the European Union, but there are more countries, so it's not one country. We will have to analyze closer the numbers from the last quarter, the second quarter, where we're seeing growth going a bit down in India. Is this something that will continue, that we will go from 6, 7 to more 5? Or is this related also to a lot of rain that has had impact on the economy? You also have that kind of situations. But provided that the government will continue with infrastructure reforms, will also reduce red tape, will continue with the business-friendly policies in India and invest in education and R&D, I think India will continue to grow strongly. And, you know, it means a lot to the world too, because when India was growing 6, 7%, it is like 20% of all global growth coming from this country. So that also has huge positive impact on the rest of the world.
Mr. Brende, the theme of the World Economic Forum for 2025 is collaboration for the intelligent age. And the biggest question is the level of impact that artificial intelligence and all the technologies that it has unleashed will have on the world in 2025. 2024, 2023 was the year when the world was discovering what AI was about. Now it's about the actual impact on business and lives. What's your outlook in terms of how AI for 2025 is likely to be different from what we've seen the last 2 years?
I think we're already seeing very much impact on the productivity gains from AI. We're wondering why is inflation going down in the US and the economy is still growing so fast with the heightened interest rate. And I think part of what we're seeing on the downward impact on inflation is that we're seeing already big productivity gains from these new technologies. We think that Gen AI will change a lot in the years to come. It's probably as big as the computer when they came. Is it as big as electricity? Is it as big as other breakthroughs? We don't know. But we can be in a situation where we can see productivity being increased by 10% in the coming decade. And that is a lot of prosperity. And I think for India, if you break it down for India, this is good news because India is pretty strong on IT, or is very strong on IT, and also IT services. And we will also, when we move from the hardware phase on AI to the software phase, when you need to put applications on, India is, in that respect, the startup nation of the world. You know, there is more than 140,000 startups in India, and there is more than 100 unicorns. And there's a new unicorn coming up every 20th day in India. So this is what makes me really then optimistic on behalf of India, is this entrepreneurial culture. Even during COVID, there was a lot of unicorns being established. And IT is also, and AI is also about thinking out of the box. Who had heard about some of these big IA companies 2-3 years ago? And if India is lucky, you can also, or continue with its policies, you can see some of these unicorns becoming global companies. So India is the startup nation now of the world, has the third largest startup community globally. And I think it can become number one in startups if it continues on this track.
There are two big military flashpoints. The first is Russia-Ukraine, and that I know is of a lot of interest to you and everyone in Europe. With Trump taking charge, and with Biden in his last days making available armaments which weren't available to Ukraine so far, what's your sense of what 2025 is likely to mean for the Russia-Ukraine war?
So every war needs to end. So will the Ukraine war end in the spring? I think that's the big question we're all now asking ourselves. Russia has lost a lot. They probably lost around 700,000 people, including those that are wounded. But also Ukraine is now feeling the pressure. We see that the missile attacks from Russia is also hurting their energy infrastructure moving into the winter. But we should not forget that Russia and Putin calculated when they attacked Ukraine originally, they calculated with taking the country in a week. Now the war is still ongoing. So we will probably see negotiations in the spring, and also where I think Trump will play a role. Will there be an agreement to have a cessation of hostilities and end the war? Where will the borders go? Will it be where they are today? What kind of security will Ukraine be guaranteed from also European countries in the future to avoid then new attacks from Russia in the future? But it's true that this war is costing a lot. It's costing human lives. But Russia has become now a war economy. 30-40% of all their spendings are going to military. So hopefully we can see a more peaceful 2025 also when it comes to Ukraine.
And lastly, Israel and what's happening in the Middle East. There's now a ceasefire that's been announced with the Hezbollah. the Hamas, they've hammered very hard against. But when it comes to the confrontation between Israel and Iran, how do you see that play out in 2025?
So we know that the life insurance for Iran in many ways was Hezbollah and Hamas with their rockets. Israel knew that if they attacked, for example, nuclear facilities or other facilities, launch pads for also ballistic missiles in Iran, they would unleash these rockets. Now Hezbollah is very much weakened, Hamas is very much weakened, and also the S-300s, the anti-air missiles, many of them were destroyed through the Israeli attacks a few weeks ago. Trump, though, says that he is the president for no wars. So I think that a further escalation now is avoidable, should be avoided. Also, I think Trump will send that clear signal to Israel and to Iran. But it's very unpredictable, the situation. I think for Trump, a red line will be development of nuclear weapons by Iran. But Israel has not the military capability. So Israel doesn't have the military capabilities to take out everything related to ballistic missiles and nuclear power, future potential nuclear developments in Iran. There you need the American B-52s because you have to have a different capabilities. So let's hope that there will be no further escalation also between Israel and Iran, because this is the least thing that the global economy now needs. Like, wars are very bad for prosperity and for development.
Well, we've covered a wide array of topics for taking our time on this visit to India. Thank you very much, Mr. Brende. Really appreciate it. Thank you.